guys, let's take a break from all the Sony videos I've been doing lately on the channel and do one on my beloved Panasonic GH5. The GH6 is just around the corner, and that is going to take the same lenses that my little GH5 takes. So what is the best lens that you can buy for the GH5 and soon the GH6? You're looking at it right now. Let's talk about it. So the problem with doing a video about your favorite lens is you can't show the lens because it's on your camera, because it's your favorite lens. So I'm going to have to switch to an inferior lens to show you the beauty Sigma 16mm f1.4. Oh, this is terrible. Everything is in focus. I had to turn my lights way up. I had to turn my ISO up. You can read what's written on my bargain basement light right here, the SL60W, but it's all worth it. Why? So I can show you this beauty of a lens, the Sigma 16mm f1.4. This is $399 on B&H right now, and I think it's the best value lens you can buy for the Micro Four Thirds system. The equivalent in the full frame to the 16mm is about a 32mm, so that's right around the 35mm focal range that a lot of people like to use for video, myself included. It gives you, you're pretty close to your camera here. I'm touching the lens here. I got this one set on about 35mm as well, and but it still gives you some room to breathe. It is a very good focal length for video, and a lot of people love it, myself included, and I think this lens is the best one you can get in that focal range. It's a bit big for a Micro Four Thirds lens. Here's a 42.5, which is an 85mm equivalent in full frame. So you can see it's quite a bit bigger, but I think it is plenty worth it. There is a Panasonic 20mm 1.7, which is roughly a 40mm 3.4 in full frame terms, so it's not quite as fast. It is a much smaller and lighter lens, but all that extra glass in the Sigma lens gives a better optical quality, in my opinion. Anyway, I can't take it anymore. I got to put this guy back on the camera. That's a lot better. And now it's an aperture light, because I have fancy lights, and I'm a fancy boy. The Sigma 16mm solves a few problems that people have with the Micro Four Thirds system. Micro Four Thirds is a smaller sensor compared to full frame or APS-C, so people struggle to get a shallow depth of field, and they also struggle in low light sometimes with these cameras. But with the aperture, the f1.4, that lets in a lot of light to your little sensor. So often in what would be normally a low light situation, this lens is like, no, we've got lots of light. Thank you very much. Let me just take you outside so you can see it for yourself. Fun fact, I'm actually in Tony Northrup's backyard. That's right, but you can't tell, can you? 1.4 aperture, which is really a 2.8 depth of field equivalent on a full frame lens. And look how close I am to the lens. I'm touching it right now. In fact, I actually have an ND filter on the lens because it's letting in so much light at 1.4, then I need to use an actual ND filter because I'm out in the middle of the day here. But I'm trying to give you an idea of the background separation that you can get. See, people think Micro Four Thirds, no background separation. Poppycosh, get yourself a Sigma 1.4. Now, if you are wondering if you can vlog on this lens, you certainly can. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it because 16mm is 32mm equivalent full frame, so that's a little tight. I've extended it out on a tripod here a little bit, and since the lens is heavy and the GH5 is pretty heavy, relatively speaking to lightweight cameras, then you're going to have awesome deltoids like myself. Work on your lateral raises, kids. Now, yes, and the lens also has no stabilization, but that is not much of a problem in the Panasonic system. As you can see, I'm walking right now, and it's quite smooth. The thing is, Panasonic's in-body image stabilization in the GH5, and coming up, the GH6 is going to be even better. The stabilization is great in the body, so you don't have to worry about it. Just try not to trip over my kids' toys here. So, if you do want to vlog and walk around the world like an idiot holding a camera, you can make this lens work. Now you see that nice bokeh? That is from 9 rounded aperture blades. Not all bokeh is created equal, and this lens has a very pleasing look to it. In fact, the entire lens, the image coming out of this lens is just the optical quality of it. It is on par with anything that I have, including all my Sony full frame glass for $399. And at the end of the day, isn't that what we're looking for? And in terms of full frame equivalents, it is a 32mm f2.8 in terms of field of view and depth of field. Now the 2.8, I think, is a fantastic amount of bokeh. When you're shooting video, what you don't want is too shallow of a depth of field. And I mean that. It looks ridiculous. If you watch any Hollywood movie, watch anything, you can tell there are things in the background. It's not just some blurry marshmallow back there. Normally, you want to see a little bit of what's going on. Not too much. Have some separation. So if you're doing like a 0.85, you know, just one eyelash is in focus, that's no good. But you don't want it to be totally clear back there and have everything in focus like a video camera. You also want your actors or your interviewees to have a little room to move around and still be in the focal plane. Because yes, you will be using manual focus a lot with not only Panasonic cameras, any camera when it comes to a high-stake environment. I have an A7 III, and yes, it is not an A7S III, but I have switched my A7 III to manual focus when I'm doing interviews, because here's what happened to me the last time I was doing an interview, just a couple of weeks ago. I'm interviewing comedians. I'm a comedian in my real life, if you couldn't tell by how hilarious I am, and they were sitting in front of a mirror. I didn't know it was a mirror because the room was kind of dark, but the audience, they would walk by and their stupid faces would be huge in this mirror, and my A7 III would go latch on to their dumb faces, losing focus on my interview subject, so I had to switch it to manual focus. So what I'm saying is, when the stakes are high, you're often using manual focus anyway. It's got a 67mm thread, which is a very common thread size if you're looking to put filters on, and you may need filters with that fast aperture, and you're out like today. When I was doing that in my backyard, I had on a neutral density filter, 6 stops of neutral density filter, because it was the sunshine, and this lens lets in tons of light. Take that, Micro Four Thirds haters. Now, in terms of cons, this is a heavy lens for the Micro Four Thirds system, but that's the thing. It has a lot of glass, and it is an excellent lens, so I am willing to put up with the weight of it, because I'm always using it on tripods for the most part anyway. You don't walk around hand holding all of your lenses. We're not all vloggers trying to show our idiotic lives, am I right? But the second con is related to that, in that it has no image stabilization in the lens. Now, if you've used most Panasonic or Olympus cameras, you will know that that is not an issue on those two systems. The IBIS on many Olympus and many Panasonic cameras is so good, and in case you don't know, this fits on the Olympus cameras. The Micro Four Thirds mount both Olympus and Panasonic, as well as the Blackmagic, among others. But specifically talking about Panasonic and Olympus, the IBIS is so good that you don't need a stabilized lens. Even if you're walking around filming, I get plenty of smooth footage with this lens and the IBIS that's in the GH5, and the IBIS in the GH6 is supposed to be even better. And lastly, for cons, it doesn't have a button on the camera that you can assign to something. Certainly with my GH5, that is not an issue, because the manual focus to autofocus, you can just switch on the camera itself, and there are plenty of other customizable buttons. So for me, the cons using it with a GH5, they are not cons at all, so I don't care about them. It's got an excellent build quality, it's built like a tank, it has weather sealing, and it has a very nice focus ring that is very smooth to use when you're using that manual focus. And speaking of manual focus, you can get a cheaper alternative to this lens. There is the Laowa 17mm f1.8. So it's not quite as fast of a lens, but the problem with the Laowa is that it's fully manual. And why does that matter when you're going to be using it as a manual lens? Is that, well, you see, Panasonic, what they have is the ability to tap the autofocus once, it locks onto you, and then it stays in manual focus. You can actually do that from the app. You could be across the room, use the app, tap to focus, it will lock onto you, and then not move. So you need a lens that can autofocus to do that, and that is what the Sigma does. And don't forget pictures. If you're taking photos, I know wedding videographers who are also photographers, and they only use the GH5, so they certainly will want an autofocusing lens when they are taking the old snappy snaps. So what you have here is a weather-sealed, well-built lens that gives you an aperture of 1.4 for $399 with optical quality that is as good as any lens I have ever used. I mean, to me, it is a no-brainer. This is amongst a trio of fantastic Sigma lenses. They have the 16mm, the 30mm, and the 56mm, and for in full frame, you have to double all that to get equivalent field of view. but those are all fantastic lenses. And they have those for APS-C as well, for Canon APS-C and for Sony APS-C. But you times Canon by 1.6 to get full frame equivalents, and you times the Sony by 1.5 to get, so the 16mm will be 24 on the Sony. In fact, when I do more Sony videos, when I get that new ZV-E10 in the house, I am going to point out that the Sigma 16mm is the best lens you can buy for that thing, in my opinion. So that's it. I hope you found it helpful. I'll leave links in the description below so you can give me some of that sweet, sweet affiliate link money. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and all that stuff. Now, if you excuse me, I'm gonna go drink my apple juice and read some rumor sites about the GH6. Can't wait for that thing. Okay, bye-bye.